Yes, absolutely. As we have said, state of being is everything in the sense of what allows you to experience what you're experiencing in a way that you prefer to. But it's not about having to stay strong as if that's supposed to be an effort that you have to make. It's about understanding how things work and allowing yourself to go with your true flow. Follow the formula. And then when you do that, you will know, if you understand how things work, you will know that no matter what's happening, you'll be okay. It's not about a struggle to stay strong. It's not an effort. It's an actual letting go, because you know, again, understanding, you know that surrender is not giving up control. Surrender is surrendering to the control that's already built into your flow, and knowing that your flow already knows where you need to go. That's most representative of your true self. Therefore, it's not something you have to struggle to maintain as a state of being. It's something you simply relax into as a state of being that is more natural for you, knowing that it will take you exactly through the eye of the needle in exactly the right way for you, and allow you to wind up on the shore you belong on.
Okay, here's kind of a cute synchronicity. Last month, my cat Moonshadow swallowed my sewing needle with thread attached. In 2 to 3 days, it passed through his system, and Moonshadow was unscathed. Is there any relationship between this incident and the 2020 Eye of the Needle?
Cats are so brilliant as reflections of higher dimensional knowledge, higher dimensional awareness, because that is a perfect reflection of the understanding that you, in a sense, are not really going through the eye of the needle. The eye of the needle is going through you.
Ooh.
And if you remain in the state of being similar to the idea of how a cat relaxes in its understanding and perception of other dimensional realities and sees more of reality than most of you do, you can allow that passage to happen and come out, as you say, unscathed.
That was beautiful. These are some questions that have to do with manifestation and the
Yes.
formula.
Yes.
Okay, so you advise us to allow rather than resist. At the same
Yes.
time, you state that action is the language of physical reality.
Yes.
So, what if I'm unhappy with a situation? I feel the urge to change it, and which may mean I'm resisting and I'm not cooperating or counteracting something.
All right. Misunderstanding of how the word resist is being used by us. Because the idea we are saying is that don't resist means don't resist yourself. We're not talking about the idea that physical actions may appear to others to be a resistance to something you don't prefer. That's not what we're talking about. We're saying don't resist your natural energy. If your true passion energy and the action that goes along with it is to make a statement physically that might appear to others to be resistant to something that's vibrationally incompatible with you, it's not the kind of resistance we're talking about when we say don't resist. We're talking about not resisting your own true energy.
And even when you, in a sense, surrender
Yes.
to yourself,
Yes.
you don't experience that as a negative or a disempowering
No.
experience. You
No. And you don't experience the physical act, really, from your point of view, as an actual physical resistance. You will experience the idea of standing up for what you believe to be true in a more positive way. It may not even be experienced as resistance from the other side, if there is another side. So the idea is that when you elevate your frequency, you find more creative ways, more positive ways to express the actions that you take that are in alignment with your true energy. And it won't even necessarily appear to be resistance in the classical sense physically. It may be a more creative expression, a more loving expression. It may come out in a very different way because you're on a level, a vibrational level, where you can be inspired by other ways to express yourself that are not necessarily going to look like the classic ways of resistance. because that again is something that is expending an effort and pushing against something instead of engaging with something in a way that invites them to go with their own flow creatively. It's not a pushing against, it's not a rebelling against. That happens when you're truly in your flow and acting on your passion. You find other ways, other avenues, and other paths by which to express the idea of your truth in contrast to something that is not your truth, that actually expresses itself in a more powerful, positive way. We once gave the idea, we once told the story of the idea of a bank robber and the bank teller, and how the idea of the bank robber coming in was in a sense diffused by the bank teller by really communicating with the robber that she actually truly cared about and was concerned about what would happen in his life if he went through the act. And so instead of resisting him, she engaged him in a way that convinced him that she truly cared about what happened to him. And therefore, because she was expressing her passion of her care and concern for him, he actually gave up robbing the bank. So the idea is that there are other paths, many other paths that might be invisible to you if you think along the classical lines of resistance, as opposed to understanding that new ways of doing things will actually come out in the physical action because you'll be on a different wavelength and capable of understanding how to act differently and in a way that might engage what might seem to be the other side instead of in a physical resistance, in a physical engagement that allows them to know that they can also choose another path that is also in their best interests, rather than themselves also believing in the idea that they have to resist and force to get what they need in life.
So, in the process of manifesting, what intensity of high energy do we have to get to in order to manifest? And how long do we have
Nothing.
to focus and
No. Nothing more than what you're already doing. Remember, you're already manifesting. You're manifesting so easily you don't even know you're doing it. It's not about just manifesting what you want. You're already manifesting. So it's not about how long do I have to focus or how strong does it have to be. You're already manifesting. If you weren't, you wouldn't have a physical reality experience. So the question is not being asked in the way that understands what manifestation is. The idea of manifestation is to understand that everything you need in life, everything that will fulfill you, everything that will be representative of your ability to express your joy is already here. All you have to do is match the frequency. In the same way, in exactly the same way, to the same degree, the same level of energy that you're doing it right now with what you do manifest. It's just a matter of shifting the frequency to be more coherent and harmonious with other things that are already here other than what you're perceiving. Because it's not about manifesting something as if it doesn't already exist. It's about matching the vibration of something that's already here to allow it to become visible and tangible to you. So you don't need any more power, any more strength, any more duration, any more focus than you already have, because you're already manifesting effortlessly every second. Just change your frequency at the same level to be more of a match to the manifestations that are more compatible with who you truly are. This is another reason why we give you the formula. All you have to do is use the formula to adjust your frequency, and you will automatically mask what is germane to that particular frequency. You will already match it, and then it will manifest. But again, remember, it's not about what you want in the egotistical sense. It's about what you need. And what you need will always fulfill you. Always. What you want may not.
to adopt the state of being rich than it is of being poor? A rich person can act and feel poor with no problem. But how can a poor person feel or act rich, especially if you can't provide food for your children?
All right, well, there are several assumptions in that question that are not necessarily accurate. First and foremost, remember that it always, and I mean always, comes down to what you believe to be true about yourself. So the idea of saying, even the saying, it's more difficult to believe you are rich than to believe you are poor, in a sense, the idea really is a fallacy, because it still comes down to what you believe you are capable of doing, of what it is you believe is real for you, based on how you think of yourself, what you believe to be true about yourself. Now, we understand that there are outer reflections and outer symbology saying, well, we don't have enough food. But again, remember, a lot of this comes from buying into certain ideas, certain systems that have been set up on your planet that make it seem like there might be a lack of things. But that's not really essentially true. It's only when you buy into those things that you find yourself in those situations, in those circumstances. So the idea also that is kind of false, I know what you mean by the question, but it's not really true, that it's easier for what you call a rich person to believe or act as if they're poor. That's actually not true. Because even though someone may be, quote unquote, acting like they're poor, their fundamental interior beliefs don't allow them to really believe that they are, because no matter how much they may try to act like they're poor, they're always going to hold on to the belief that they can stop acting like that at any moment. Whereas the idea of the belief systems of someone who is really believing that they're poor doesn't necessarily contain the ability to believe that they can stop acting like that at any moment, stop being poor at any moment, whereas the so-called rich person can stop acting poor at any moment in their belief system. So that's the fundamental difference in those two belief systems, is one of them doesn't believe that they can stop experiencing that necessarily, while the other one does believe they can stop experiencing the concept of being poor at any time they wish. So they're never really truly believing that they're poor. That's a big difference in terms of the belief system. But also, the idea again of experiencing what you call poverty, still being based on the concept of something you believe to be true about yourself, also has the potential for positive and negative reasons, because sometimes people will choose to experience those things for a variety of positive reasons that can be a life lesson to them and help them make other kinds of choices eventually, and also perhaps even be a life lesson to other people around them who may see them as capable of actually extracting themselves from that experience, and prove to others that no matter how quote-unquote down you may seem to be, there is always the possibility of changing and shifting and extracting yourself from that experience. But fundamentally, the simple answer is it always comes back to what you believe to be true about yourself. It's not something that's inevitable. It's not something that can't be changed. And the so-called difficulty that you may be experiencing in changing that only has to do with what you believe to be true about yourself. It's not an automatic, inherently true fact.
Yeah, speaking of synchronicity, sometimes people comment because they can hear the roosters in the background.
Yes.
Is that the roosters all reminding us all to continue waking up?
Yes.
It's kind of funny. Um,
Synchronicity often is.
it is. It has a sense of humor.
Well, in a sense.
Well, it probably doesn't have a mind of its own, right? So
It's part of the automatic functioning, but it does present the idea that waking up also does contain a sense of humor.
so is it always important to follow through or act upon synchronicity? And is synchronicity always positive?
Synchronicity can express itself negatively for positive reasons. In other words, you can have synchronicity bring you opportunities to act on that are clearly, in your mind, most likely, representative of things to move on, to act on, to move forward on. Opportunities that do represent your passion. But remember that synchronicity can, like anything, serve double duty. And synchronicity, for a positive reason, can act negatively by preventing you from acting on things that aren't your path of least resistance, that aren't your passion. So while sometimes people may say, well, I seem to be having difficulty actually acting on these things, always the number one thing to first check is, are you the one dampening your ability to do that by a fear-based belief? But if you clear that belief out, if it's there, and still find yourself unable to move in a certain direction that would seem to be your passion, and yet you are prevented over and over and over again from being capable of moving forward along that path, along that choice, that can be synchronicity acting negatively for the positive reason of simply saying to you, this is not your choice right now that serves you best. So you have to develop the discernment to understand, once you clarify your own belief system, to recognize the difference between when synchronicity is saying, yes, act on that by making it easier to do so, or no, don't act on this now, even though it might be somewhat representative of your passion, because it's not the step that you need to take at this moment that is actually the path of least resistance. So look for what you can act on that is representative of your passion at that moment, or some passion at that moment, and what is capable of allowing you to be acted upon. But don't keep banging your head against the wall when synchronicity is telling you this is not the step to take at this moment, because it is giving you the path that you need to take by removing your ability to act on things at that moment as a negative form of synchronicity for a positive reason.
So sometimes things will show up and you can't tell if it's a positive synchronicity or a negative synchronicity. It may look like it's a positive synchronicity, but if you take the step in that direction,
Yes.
then things come back to you that show you that that was actually, you had fear when you made that choice, or you made the choice out of fear as opposed to empowerment.
Well, again, as I just explained, it's up to you to examine whether or not you are unable to move forward because of a fear-based belief. But if you have cleared that fear-based belief from yourself and still can't move forward, then that's a good indication that it's negative synchronicity saying this is not the path, this is not the step right now. Go in another direction. So it's actually easy to tell once you clear yourself and recognize and in honest self-investigation have discovered that you're not the one dampening it through a fear-based belief.
So, like, if someone shows up in your life and it appears to be a really positive thing, but then once you get involved with that person, you find out that it's actually quite negative.
Again, it's still there for a positive reason for you to learn something positive from it. If nothing else, recognize the signs that these are not the kind of people you want to interact with. That's a positive lesson learned from something negative coming into your life because you're using it in a positive way. That's why it's so important. The fourth step of the formula is so important, so critical, to always remain in a positive state so that even if something manifests in your life that you objectively don't prefer, by staying in a positive state, you will learn something positive from it. You will know it's there for a reason that could serve you. And if you stay in the positive state, you'll be able to use what you don't prefer in a way that you do.
And where does discernment fit in this idea?
Well, again, if you're really honest in your own self-investigation, you can know the difference between excitement and anxiety, and you can have the discernment to tell more easily what it is that is appropriate for you and what is not. You'll recognize the vibrations more quickly by having honest self-investigation and clearing yourself of fear-based beliefs. It will simply come down to an expansion of your senses to be able to tell the difference between what is and isn't vibrationally compatible with you, and even if it shows up, then to simply use it in a way that is vibrationally compatible with you, regardless of whether the thing itself or the person themselves actually ever changes. Doesn't matter. You can still recognize what is not vibrationally compatible with you in its own essence while still using its presence in order to move forward in a way that is vibrationally compatible with you. So the difference between the idea of presence and essence is easy to discern. The more you clear yourself of fear-based beliefs, you'll simply expand your ability to sense what is not vibrationally compatible, but also maintain the ability to use it in a way that is vibrationally compatible.